I've been working as data engineer at Okta on the L0 product side for more than 4 years now. And today I would like to show you our journey since we started using DBT and Airflow from where the point we are right now. And yeah, so basically how we managed to create dags dynamically using Airflow. So I would like to first ask you how many of you are using DBT today? All right. And how many of you are using Airflow and DBT? All right. Okay. So yeah, almost everybody. Okay, so thank you very much for being here. Okay, so this is a briefly agenda about what I'm going to talk about today. And basically I'm going to start with a challenge and basic, common pitfalls and DBT and Airflow basics. I'm going to show a little bit of the solution that we go through and how we managed to generate DAGs dynamically using DBTs. I'm going to dive a little bit or much bit on the solution and how it works and some improvements that we did that are not common ones. And then I'm just going to show you a really small slide about the automation, how it works. I'm going to explain just a little bit. All right. So first of all, probably how many of you have started a DBT journey from zero when you joined your company? Okay, not that many people. So probably the other people, when you join your company, DBT was already there for a few months, maybe a year, so you probably never faced that problem, but it's very common. So probably when you start using DBT and Airflow, you realize that, you started out doing a POC, you don't need a complex Airflow DAG, so you just start creating one, probably called DBT, where two tasks. One is for DBT run, and the other one is for DBT test. Maybe you also have DBT seats, wherever. And yeah, that works great. It's very simple. You don't have to do anything. And yeah, it works. But the problem is that when you start adding more and more DBT models at this simple and effective Airflow DAG, it just starts becoming problematic. And the main point is when your DBT project grows and you have more than, I'm saying 50, but maybe 20 models, and one of them fail, with this approach, you will need to rerun the whole Airflow task, even if one single model fails. So imagine that it takes 2 hours. So you will need to rerun the whole workflow, wait for another 2 hours, and then hopefully run the test again and hope it works. Maybe not. So it's just a waste of time doing this when you are scaling your project. So yeah, probably some of you start with this, but yeah, it's not the best solution, and also it's not compliant with the Airflow principle where the task should be atomic and rerunnable, independently rerunnable. So, okay, so what about if we think in a better solution? So probably some of you, so this is an example about how simple DAG should work using the bash operator or any operator you want. So if we think about a better solution of doing this, we are going to realize that, okay, let's not use a simple DAG. Let's use one DAG per source, or maybe by project. So if we think about similar solution, will look something like this. So we have, this is an example of a JFL shop, where basically you have orders, customers, so any data source that you want to have. And we just start creating different DAGs for different sources, and we just change the command to use DBT run select staging orders. We test the staging orders, and then you can have more tasks like March order or anything you want. But then this approach works great, and it's just so much more efficient. But it's as soon as you start growing and more your DBT project, you will realize that creating sensors between the different DAGs, it's become a nightmare. And then you are just losing the power of Airflow, where the tasks are still not atomic and are not independently rerunnable. And the most important part, you are missing the most powerful part of the DBT project. So basically, when we think about how the hell we can run DBT in Airflow in a proper way, you start thinking, okay, so why DBT knows everything about your project? It's DBT, so why shouldn't know everything? So why we cannot use DBT to create the Airflow DAGs? So we basically go for that solution. And yeah, so checking DBT or reading DBT, you understand that you can create one-on-one mappings between DBT models and the Airflow tasks. So you can do that by parsing the manifest JSON file where basically contains all the information from your project, like everything. It contains your models, the queries, the database, the schema, the downstreams, the upstreams, the test that you are running for this model, everything. If you are using a Snowflake, it also contains your Snowflake warehouse and the connection, whatever you want. All right. So, like the advantage to using this, it's that basically it's going to allow you to understand all your dependencies in one single Airflow DAG, and it's going to allow you basically to rerun any task that failed, and you can also like manage the different DBT tests that you are running through, and just like add them exactly where you want in the DBT, like after the DBT run. So this is just like a small example, very small one, how this approach looks like. Sorry, I didn't share the code how to create those, but I'm working on that. So yeah, basically, instead of having like one single DBT task or Airflow task, you just are able to create one single DAG with all the different DBT commands that you need to run. So in this case, you can see that we have like 4 different models. We are using empty operators, just like for sensors or whatever. That's basically how a DAG should look like. All right, so I want to dive now in a different like solution that we have implemented. And the first one, and it's the most important one, it's like task groups. Task groups are not like anything outside of the UI stuff. So it doesn't change any logical behavior from your Airflow DAG. It just makes so much easier to read an Airflow DAG. So basically, you can group the tasks on the Airflow DAG whatever you want. So you can do whatever you want with the task groups. And yeah, as I mentioned, so it's not something that it's going to change like any logical behavior. But yeah, so it's just like so much easier to read. And it's going to look, and your Airflow DAG, it's going to look like so much easy to understand, basically. Because imagine that you have, I mean, let's say 500 DBT models. How like an Airflow DAG would look like without this. It's just a nightmare. So, and if you are adding this plus the DBT runs and DBT test, you are just going to become crazy. All right, so yeah, task groups is a really nice feature that Airflow provide. And yeah, so we are just using it. So here I'm just going to show you like a small example. I'm just going to show like a small example how like task groups look like. So we have like different DBT run commands. And you can see like some of them only have like 1 task and some of them have 2 tasks. And this is basically because some models doesn't have test. That's for like business reasons or like technical reasons. And some of them has like 2 tasks, 1 for run and 1 for test. So if you don't want to expand like the different task groups, you don't have to. But yeah, so in the first goal, if you want to just check which Airflow task failed, it's so much easier to do it with task groups. So the second improvement that we did is handling ephemeral models. So probably some of you are using like ephemeral models, are super useful. They basically work as CTEs, DBT runtime. And well, we basically use them when you don't want to have like a single DBT model with like 500 lines. So you create like an ephemeral model. But let's say you want or you need this ephemeral model to appear on the graph. Because it's very important to keep the consistency and to understand which is my upstream task and which is my downstream one. So yeah, we need to keep the consistency. And the problem is that if we don't understand which Airflow tasks are going to run like ephemeral models, what's going to happen basically, it's the same when you are trying to run like a DBT ephemeral model. And you're going to try to run, DBT is going to let you run, but nothing's going to happen. Because yeah, it's ephemeral, so it's not going to store anything, just like a CTE, and nothing is going to happen. But you are going to waste like maybe a minute, maybe 2 minutes from the scheduler, from the workers. It's just like resources and time that we don't want to use. So as I mentioned before, with the manifest.json file contains everything and contains the resource type, we can know when a model is ephemeral, and we just set them, okay, when you found this, just like use the empty operator. It's not doing anything. It takes like 0.01 second. And we managed to keep like structural integrity, and the DBT graph just like preserve all the structure. And yeah, we are just not like running useless tasks on Airflow. All right, so this is like just like a small example also of how the empty operator and ephemeral models. Yeah, usually they are always running at the beginning. you see that, yeah, we basically like after this DBT run, yeah, there is only a task that won't mean anything because the downstream task, it's the one that it's going to run the ephemeral model, but basically, yeah, we just give engineers or analysts a way to understand that this ephemeral model, it's just like a upstream dependency of theirs without losing any time and without losing any resources. All right, so next point about the improvements and is about the same point is basically we don't have DBT tests for all the DBT models. And yeah, I know like someone is going to say that we should, but the reality is maybe we don't always need them. And maybe, yeah, sometimes tests are great, but not always, right? I don't know. For example, we use like blue, green models. And when we are just like swapping models from pre-production to production, we don't need to run the same test again because we are just swapping tables. So yeah, that models are just swapping tables. We don't need to run tests. Okay, so why don't filter out models that doesn't have test and don't create like DBT test task in Airflow? Okay, easy. Again, like the manifest.json file contains all the information and it's going to give you that your specific model doesn't have any DBT test to run. And yeah, so you're just going to filter out those models from the DBT task or the DBT tag. So yeah, basically, again, so you're not going to lose like any time because imagine that you are trying to run the common DBT test on a test that doesn't exist. So basically DBT, yeah, it's going to try to run it and at the end it's going to tell you nothing to run. But yeah, you just lose like 1 minute, maybe 2. I don't know, depends on your DBT parsing time. But yeah, the whole benefit of this is you don't waste any resources. And again, it's the same point as the last one, where we don't want to waste like time or resources. All right, and this is also another improvement that maybe some of you, how many of you are using DBT and Snowflake? Okay, a bunch of people. So maybe you already faced that problem. The manifest.json file not only contains like information about your DBT models or how DBT tests, downstream dependencies, upstream ones, it also contains all the information, all the configuration information from your sources. So in this case, I'm talking about Snowflake, but can be like, I'm pretty sure that if for any other like sources will contain like different configuration information. All right, so we realize, I mean, it was not easy to understand, but we realized that, for example, in the case of Snowflake, when you define your Snowflake warehouse in the DBT project YAML and you are running the DBT test, DBT just like, I don't know why, but they don't care about it. And they just use like the default warehouse that you have defined in the profiles. So it means imagine that you have a DBT run or DBT model running on a X large warehouse and then you want to run a test. You probably also want to use like a X large warehouse because it makes sense, right? You have like a big table that you need like a big warehouse to make it run, and you also want to use like a large X large warehouse to test it because probably it's going to go like through a lot of different rows. And yeah, so DBT project YAML, it's really good to make a structure really easy, but DBT just like doesn't care about, in this case, like a Snowflake warehouse. So as I mentioned, like DBT manifest.json file contains all the information, and it also contains the warehouse that I have configured my DBT models to run. Okay, so why we don't extract DBT like a Snowflake warehouse from the DBT manifest.json file? All right, so easy peasy. How many lines is code? Well, we have some indents, but super easy. So we just get like configuration, and we are just setting like the environment variables for this DBT test. So means like in the same like using like the same file and in a very easy way, we are just able to force DBT, like something that DBT should do. But we are just forcing to use this specific warehouse, which is exactly the same that DBT is using for run, to use it for test. That's it. So that solution will depend on what you are using for, but I'm pretty sure like for other sources, you will have like similar solutions. All right, so probably at this point of time, we are always wondering, okay, I have all this information. I'm able to filter out models without testing. I'm able to don't waste time for ephemeral models. I'm also able to like hack DBT in order like to use the Snowflake warehouse that we want to use. But then like the main challenge that we face is I can't have one single Airflow DAG with all my models, right? So if you have like 2,000 models, how the hell you split the different airflow dags to have like some kind of business logic, and at some point of time to be not small enough but not big enough. So yeah, I have to say that this was one of the biggest challenge, and after digging a lot of different options that you can have to group the different DBT models and the airflow dags, we realized that DBT dags were the best solution. And I'm going to explain a little bit why. DBT dags are just like a flexible definition of your models, and you can define them like in the DBT project, you can define them in the config model. So means you can have as many DBT tags you want for each model, and they don't have to like collide each other. So means that I can define, for example, in my DBT project YAML, let's say like a staging tag and orders tag, and then in one specific model that maybe also it's related to customers, I can have a staging, orders, and customer tag. All right. So also like tags works in a very smart way when you define them in the DBT project YAML. And it's basically when you have them defined on a parent folder, all the child folders are going to like inherit the different tags. So as I explained here, so yeah, you just tag one folder as a staging because all your staging models are defined there. And everything inside this folder will contain this tag. So yeah, very simple to use. So basically, once we decide to use like DBT tags to split the different airflow tags, yeah, we just realized that it's simple to use, easy to understand because you can see them. But let's say not everything is perfect, and there is like some small issues that you can face when using this. So I'm just gonna show you like a small example here about like how tags are working. So I mentioned before, like you can have like a staging folder, for example, and the tag that you define at the beginning, it's going to like inherit in all the different folders. And the same as like integrated. Basically, I'm just mentioning that to make sure your DBT tags are working well, you need like a very structured and very mature like DBT, how to say, like naming convention, project structure, and you need to have everything like super under control. I want to show you a little bit how that's going to work at the end. So basically you can see like I'm just filtering out in this airflow tag the quality ones, the one that has the quality tag. So you can see now it's going to change to the staging one, and super easy, it works like in 10 seconds. And so basically now I'm just creating an airflow tag, filtering out the models that has app looks and the staging tag. So yeah, it's just like, as I mentioned before, so it's going to run. Some of them has tests, some of them have not. And for example, as I mentioned, as the tags are inherited from each folder, when I'm removing the staging tag, everything's going to look like the same because all the models from that has like app looks tag already has the staging tag. So if I remove it from the airflow tag definition, nothing is going to change. And again, so I'm just specifying if I change now, like using data daily and data enablement, you will see that the airflow tag just changed, and it's running all the models that are tagged as daily and are running from the data enablement team. So yeah, this is a massive one, as you can see. All right, so you can see basically downline is very simple to use. It's one single line, so it means that we are trying to democratize the usage of the airflow and the DBT. For any non-expertise analyst, it's very easy to create like a new airflow tag. They just have to tag, they create new models, they tag them whatever they want. You create a new airflow tag, and between like 25 lines, you can have your airflow tag running everything. All right, so not everything is perfect because DBT tags, so we found them that are the best solution ever, and you have like certain challenge that we have to face. And basically, tag inherence can be like some kind of opaque, and that means when you have like a really like complex structure in DBT, you sometimes won't understand which DBT tags has for certain specific models. So it means that imagine that you have like 5 different folders, one inside another one. Sometimes you just lose the count of how many tags this model has. So yeah, it's not easy basically to understand. So that's why I mentioned it before, like it requires like a very mature project structure. Again, sometimes for onboarding and maintenance, it's not easy because when some like analyst, it's creating like a new DBT model, sometimes you are wondering which Airflow DAG it's going to run my new DBT model. So it's going to be picked up by this one, it's going to be picked up by another one, or even should I create a new Airflow DAG for this new DBT model? So again, if we don't have like a really good structure on the DBT project, all these questions are going to be like just a nightmare. But I think if you don't have a really good DBT structure, any solution that you choose for Airflow when running DBT, it's not going to be a nightmare. So yeah. So just like to keep in mind, we don't want to say that DBT tags are the best solution. It just works for us. And yeah, like just basically not everything is perfect. All right, so the last slide I want to show, it's basically how this automation and how the CI/CD works for this. You can see the image, it's very simple because it's actually Iris. So we are using DBT in an isolated Docker image. And the reason why is because we don't want to manage like different dependencies from DBT and Airflow, wherever. And also this allows us to run our DBT image whatever we want. So yeah, it doesn't have to be like AWS, Airflow, whatever. So we're using Docker, we can run this Docker image whatever we want. So basically when a developer just like merge the main master to main branch, we are creating like a DBT image. And one of the most important things that we are doing with this image is when we are creating it, we are like parsing the DBT project inside this image. So it means every time we run a different task or DBT command, we don't have to parse the project again. So this is just like when you are having like a really big DBT project, every task that you are running, it's going to spend 1 minute for every task to just parse the project. So if we are able to do that in the Docker image, yeah, everything inside this Docker image is already parsed, and you just like spend the time that you want on the DBT command side. From the other point of view, every time you merge the main, we are creating the manifest.json file. I mean, there's a lot of commands that create those, and we just like copy this manifest.json file to an S3 bucket, and then we mount this manifest.json file to the Airflow folder. I mean, it doesn't matter the folder you choose. You just need to then read it with the function. And basically, every like DBT command or every Airflow task, it's going to pull the image with the tag that you have specified. It's going to also like read the manifest.json file with the same tagging, and it's going to be able, as I mentioned, like it's not going to need to wait for the DBT parsing, and yeah, it's just like simple, but it works. So I'm just gonna talk about a little bit about like future improvements that we will think about. So Airflow 3.0 was released like some time ago, but we didn't have the time yet to like adapt our solution to the new features. So yeah, this is a pending task that we have because there is a lot of them. And one of them is basically the assets to drag DAG dependencies. As I mentioned, we are splitting the different Airflow DAGs using DBT tags, but there is like a next challenge, and it's basically how the hell we can have like different DAG dependencies. So basically, I think, well, I didn't try that, but as I mentioned, like from the manifest, I can extract everything. I can not only extract the dependencies from my DBT tags, I can also extract the dependencies from the whole DBT project. So probably maybe using assets can be a good option to track DAG dependencies, right? So I can just like assets, create an asset for each Airflow task and DBT model, and just like create dependencies between different DAGs. And also probably a lot of you are using nowadays like Kafka or any like PubSub solution. And basically we are also thinking about like getting rid of schedulers with cron, and yeah, maybe using like external triggers for this. This is one of the improvements that we would like to work on it.